You know, you walk around, you talk to the teams, and really they're busy and they're working. So you get a thumbs up, and that's about for me, that's been about the length of the conversations from most of them. So they'll continue to work on it. And I think that, like in any test, teams will leave out of here, and some will be happy, and some will be in the middle of the road, and then you'll have a couple sad ones, you know, as they go back and go to work on their equipment again. So far it's been uneventful, knock on wood. You know, it looks like there's some teams out there maybe working on some durability on some things. I know that the 11 car is well over 200 laps in so far today, and there's some other ones that are approaching 100 laps, so that looks to be going pretty good.
And John, from your perspective, we got a couple tests on our belt, Daytona and here in December. How are things looking for you?
It's definitely just another step in the launch of the Generation 6 car, but there's probably more cars here today that I'll term as real race cars with full manufacturer steel bodies and the correct components, deck lids, hoods, and everything else that goes with it. So for a lot of the teams, the test is probably more real life than what some of our previous tests here have been. Not other than that, not a lot's changed. I think from the rules package wise and specification for the cars, all of that has pretty much settled down. We had most of that dialed in from our previous test here in December. So everybody's taking those specifications and going forward with them and just trying to do the best they can now as we get ready to start into the real season. So.
All right, we'll open it up for questions. You just raise your hand. We'll get a wireless mic to you. We'll start with Jeff. We'll go to Kenny and then Bob.
Jeff Clark from USA Today. Robin, you mentioned a lot of teams are working on durability, or at least some are. Does it feel good to see that these cars are holding up? Or I imagine you figured they would, but does it give you any peace of mind to see that they're doing that well?
Yeah, probably and John could probably add to this, but the durability part is because of the rear axle camber that we've given the teams the latitude to work in, you know, which helps the car grip. So with that being something new, and those numbers new to the garage area, those parameters, you know, there's guys are making sure that part of it, you know, that it can go 600 miles or more. So it's nice to think that that's the effort. They put that effort into that with one whole race team and do that, and probably others working on other things.
Okay.
Kenny Bruce from NASCAR.com. It's for either one of you who want to answer this. Both of you talked about what the teams are telling you, what you're seeing from the teams out there as far as whether they're happy or sad or whatever. What do you guys see? I mean, do you get the impression that this car is going to be better, that it's going to be racier, that teams are going to be able to work more with it and do more things with it, or will you not know that until we actually get on the track and get 43 of them out there racing?
Well, we know where the car was last year, where last year's car was, and some of the things that the input that we've got about aerodynamics and how cars around each other, we set out to make the car better than that, and we have given more underbody to work with, more area. We've extended the splitters a little bit, and so they should react a little bit better in the draft. And if you've noticed that the body is a little bit different shape, so it should react a little bit different in the air. So our goal was to start better than we left the last car, and we do have better numbers on the car, and I think the driver's confidence that they can hustle the car a little bit more will be there with this car once they get their setups fine-tuned. John can add to that, I think.
Yeah, for me, I got to tell you, I'm like every other race fan in the world. I've been jacked up about this new car since we started putting it on paper, and watching it develop has even been more fun. But part of that is I had my list also of everything that I didn't really like about the Gen 5 car and things that I wished we could change, and some of those changes they're just not practical to do in the middle of a run of a style of car, because just creates too much chaos in it. So when we started putting all the parts and pieces together for the Gen 6 car, it was time to look at introducing a lot of those things. And with the helps of our engineers at the tech center and a lot of, just bull sessions and talks and comparing notes and everything, there's so many things that have changed. Obviously, the appearance of the Generation 6 car is one of the best we've ever had, and that's probably the most visible change. But when I look at the list of things that changed in addition to that, Robin spoke to rear axle camber and increasing that. We weren't using but half of the rear tires on the other car. The fact that the weight of the cars has been reduced by 150 pounds. Some of the new spindle designs that have been introduced by the teams. There's just a whole list of things, and all of those were in an effort to close up the competition a little. I don't know if we necessarily need to do too much of that, but at least in doing that, we approached it from a different direction. We put more toolbox drawers full of tools back in the crew chief's hands. There's more things for them to work with, to adjust with, to move around and try and experiment with. So when you come to a test like this one or the one in December, both of them, you see somebody doing a durability run. That's because of a lot of the other changes that probably kind of fell by the wayside or haven't been talked about a lot. But there's a whole list of goodies now that everybody's playing with and experimenting with. Changing the mousetrap just a little bit. But from leaving the last year's car and working on this new one, there's enough that's different and changes, and a lot of them have all been pointed to making life easier and more adjustable for the guys in the garage, as well as enhancing the actual performance of the car on a racetrack. When you ask what we think of the test, I'm not a big testing fan. There's a lot of tests that are like watching paint dry, right? But all of the tests for this car have just been fun and exciting to go to because of all of those things, and working with the teams and hearing what they're doing with them and the progress they're making. So.
Not all tests have been fun. We've had a few bad ones along the way too.
Bob Parker, Sporting News. I have a couple of questions. First, since a lot of the teams had time to go through the new laser tech, are most of the cars fairly legal as far as that kind of tech template is concerned?
Yeah, I'll refrain from calling it a template because it's not. It gets people confused that it relates to the bodies of the car, which it does not. But, the laser platform through its development have been something to obviously upgrade the level of inspection technology in the garage, but more importantly, I think that upgrading it's to help showcase some of the technology that's out there and that's used every day by the teams and NASCAR both. There's a lot of times we're criticized for being a little bit prehistoric or doing the dinosaur walk too long on some things. And the sad part of all of that is there's probably more technology being used in NASCAR racing than in most forms, if not all forms of motorsports. It's just not flaunted at the racetrack during the race. When you look at what it takes to build a car and design one, test it, put it on a racetrack from either side, from the race teams or NASCARs, when you're talking about wind tunnels and computer simulation programs and 7 post-shaker rigs and shock dynos and engine dynos and AVL dynos and all of that stuff that goes into play to bring a car from the steel rack to the racetrack, it's incredible. So we introduced a lot of that into our inspection process, but again, it was back at home. It was where nobody could see it. We've been roamer arming cars at the R&D Center since the inception of the Generation 5 car. The laser platform is a way to try to grab a big piece of a lot of that technology and make it mobile. Because most of the technologies that we use, one of the drawbacks is it's really, really hard to mobilize them. It's hard to find that technology that you can practically put in place hauling it up and down the road 40 weeks a year in the back of a tractor trailer, unload it, and have any consistent type of result. So through the effort of a lot of our officials and some help from our engineers and IT people and everything, we finally reached that point. And the laser platform is something that we feel really good. We're excited about that, as well as a lot of the teams that have already adapted to it do as well, because it's going to be very accurate. It's going to be very consistent. It doesn't change the technical inspection procedure much. It's just one unit is replacing probably 15 or 20 mechanical handheld gauges that we used to use in the past. So we had it here just for the use of the teams. To your point, Bob, there was many cars that came across it, and it's like anything else. You know, if we're off now, where it's a few thousands here, a few thousands there, it's numbers that, for all practical purposes, aren't even worth arguing about. So that kind of made everybody feel good, as well as our guys have been working so hard on putting that piece together.
And also, was there any consideration of extending the test to Saturday? And is there any consideration, since you only got in one day today, of coming back at another time?
You want to be here tomorrow?
I didn't ask, no.
Okay.
No,
It's an easy question to answer.
I mean, because you want it, I mean, is it?
No, a lot of it's just in respect to the teams. You know, there's some teams that would test every day that they can, but this is a NASCAR organized test, so there's a lot of things that go into that. You know, it's knowing that the teams are trying to catch up building cars and that their shop time is very valuable to them. It's knowing that everybody goes back into the field for real in 40 days or whatever it is. So that doesn't leave a lot of time left. And, you know, there's 1,000 guys working out there right now. They got families that need a couple of weekends at home. And if they can get another few hours into the shop instead of being somewhere at a racetrack, it's not the worst thing in the world. So when this test was scheduled, we talked to a lot of the teams and promised them, or at least told them we would do what we could do to keep it away from the weekend to help preserve that for them, and that's what we're doing.
Well, Lee, Wolfgang, and then Claire.
Lee Spencer, Fox Sports. Sorry I came in a little late, but Bibble said when the sun goes down, he's expecting 27-second laps. Are the speeds where you want them to be? Are you comfortable with what the speeds are? And do you anticipate that this will help with side-by-side racing?
The sun going down?
No, just the speeds, how the cars are reacting.
Yeah, I mean, the speeds are what they are. I mean, we're still not quite where we were the last test, and I think that's based on the fact that cars are more than likely closer to what really race. So speeds are good, and I think as John explained, the things that we've given back to the teams to work on are all an effort for the teams to have more tools to compete better. Some of the things that we've worked on, where we get our downforce, how we evacuate air from up underneath the car, if the team chooses to do so, with different ductwork and cooling hoses and stuff. That's all in an effort to make the cars run a little bit better in groups or in packs. So, we put our best foot forward, and the goal was to be better than we were a year ago, and I think we've achieved that. But you can't, we're not going to lead with our chin here, but we know that we've worked hard, we know that we've made gains, we know the car is better than the last car. There's more drivers out there that like this car better than the last car, and when you put all of those things together, it should equate out to be better racing.
Okay.
Two questions for you, Robin. Number one, after the Chrysler Auto Group with Dodge pulled out, is there any interest from foreign manufacturers to join the NASCAR business in Sprint Car? And question number two, after 1 year now with the fuel injection, is the injection unchanged, or is there any technical update from the supplier and manufacturer?
Occasionally we'll get a cold call from another manufacturer, and and we'll sit down and talk to them. It's you'll get them every now and then and talk and explain, and how things work and what our garage area is and how it exists and what we expect out of manufacturers that come in. You know, it remains to be seen if I'm sure there's some that are taking a serious look moving forward, but there shouldn't be anything new for the next foreseeable future, say next year or two. So, and fuel injection, no changes, right?
The basic system, basic system and hard parts pretty much remain the same. There's been some refinements in a few areas, basically to help resolve a couple of the small issues we had early on last year with power control relays and things of those natures. The teams have learned a lot about the value of good housekeeping with wiring harnesses and things. But as far as any rule revisions or NASCAR changes to the system, no. Through the development of the system, I don't know what the exact number is, but we're probably on our 11th or 12th software revision. Some that were requested by NASCAR just to either close up windows or to add additional components that we requested. And a lot of them, like any software program that's new, you find a bug every now and then. That McLaren has gone in and cleaned up and revised the software, whether to make it more user-friendly or less or more bulletproof. So the basic system and the conversion of that whole process that we went through last year was about as seamless of transition as I think anybody could ever hope for, which is okay. Which is okay.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. Can you talk about what you'll do with the information you get from today, before we see you at Daytona, obviously?
Repeat the question. What would we do with the information?
What will you guys go back and do now? What does it look like the next couple of weeks? This test is over. We know what the teams do. What will you guys do with what you look at today? Obviously, you'll digest it more as you go into the next week.
I think it's more on the feedback that we get from our teams. We have a call with them every week. And it's been the questions have been on the decline, but after a test like this, I'm sure there'll be some discussions moving forward. But we're waiting for those guys to build more cars and work on their stuff, and they'll give us some feedback on what they felt that that the car did, what it did for them today. So we'll wait and see.
Dave Ryan, USA Today. John, you kind of alluded to it, but that cambered rear end and the advantages that provided for some teams and crew chiefs talked about how that's going to be part of the changing the game. Could you maybe put that in layman's terms, either of you guys, I guess, to explain like what's different about it and what it is and how it's different from the previous iteration of the car?
Camber is the horizontal tilt of a wheel assembly. Okay. If you look at Daytona, for example, and just remember what you've seen. Front wheels look like they're pretty much straight up and down, right? Versus going to Martinsville and you go, oh my God, what happened to the cars? The wheel looks like it's going to fall off, right? That's camber when you move in and out. It's a very adjustable component on the front of all the cars and has been for years. When the radial tire was introduced, the value of camber on the rear axle also started becoming an experimentation to understand it. Back in the 90s, right, as the teams learned to that, they showed up at Martinsville with a whole bunch of rear camber and half a dozen cars dropped out of the race with broken axles.
A dozen and a half.
A dozen and a half. Because the technology of doing all of that probably wasn't researched and defined as well as it should. So NASCAR put a rule in that said you could only have 1.8 degrees of camber, which is a measurement for how much the wheel's tilted in. Today, the materials are better, the engineering's better, the ability to make all of that happen without breaking parts is extremely better. So realizing how much of the unused tire, or how much of the tire that we weren't maximizing or optimizing, part of one of the rule changes for the new car is that they're allowed 3.5 degrees of rear camber. So the right rear specifically, you'll see leaned in more at the top. That puts a lot of stress and strain still on that axle shaft. So one of the, Robin mentioned the 11 car running a durability test. So they've got some components that they feel pretty good about, and the final proof is to see how many miles it'll go without having trouble or wearing out. That's obviously what they're doing that today. And teams do that in a lot of different ways, that they can simulate that type of loading and rigs on a machine right at their shop. A lot of teams like to just simply put files on the car to get a really good picture of all of that. And that's it in a nutshell.
When you guys talk about mechanical grip, that's part of it.
That's part of what increases mechanical grip. I don't know if you had the opportunity to look at any of the footage from Daytona testing, but I know our 78 team gave some pretty cool footage to television, to air, and if you watch the tire, especially when it went in the corner, it's incredible how much those tires move when they're under load in the corner. Adding camber or tilting the wheel in more on the racetrack to kind of match the banking of the turns helps that load and helps stabilize that tire so that the footprint stays flatter on the racetrack.
Stan Creekmore with RPMtonight.com. Just to follow up to that question, what was the maximum camber allowance last year?
1.8 degrees.
Okay, so it's gone up 1.2 degrees.
1.7 by my math. But
Okay, whatever. Thank you.
almost double.
Right.
Say that?
Yeah.
Bob Harper, Sporting News. Now that you've had a kind of a week to evaluate last weekend, are you considering any rule changes for the Speedway package?
Hell no, I wouldn't change nothing. I just can't wait to get back there.
Okay.
Any other questions for Robin or John? All right, guys, thanks for the time.
Everybody have a nice Christmas.
I'm going crazy.